Hello, friends. Robert Bevan here, author of the Caverns Creatures series of comedy, fantasy novels, and short stories. With me is Sam West, and today is what day is it, Sam?
It's Warlock Wednesday, but it's kind of like a sleepy Warlock Wednesday because I'm a little bit light on coffee. So,
Sam, it's Warlock Wednesday. Bring your A game.
all right. Sorry, I'm on it. Focused. Okay, Warlock Wednesday,
Whoa, whoa,
best day of the
whoa.
week.
Is this a bit because we're doing Lance of Lethargy today?
Maybe.
Yeah. Okay.
All
Let's run with that. That's what it is.
right, sure,
One, Sam.
absolutely.
Man,
This
you sure could use a cup of Joe after
definitely
that
could.
Lance of Lethargy.
I have been hit by a Lanthe of Lethargy. Only one, though, because they only happen once per turn. Because what it says from Xanthar Card to everything is once on each of your turns, when it hit a creature with Eldritch Blast, you can reduce its speed by 10 feet until the end of your next turn. So it had the potential to be interesting, and then they added once on each of your turns to the start of this. And that makes me a little bit bummed out because it takes all of the like fun build around potential of it and kind of like kills it. But I think if you really like Ray of Frost, and Bob, I know you really like Ray of Frost, this might appeal to you. And if you're in an environment with big sweeping battle maps, if this ever reduces a creature's speed to the point where it has to dash to get to you, it's fine. And for that reason, I'm like, it's not the worst of the Eldritch Blast invocations, I don't think, right?
Uh, Trying to think of. Oh no, probably not. Um, Still, all right. Out of all the Eldritch Blast invocations, most of them say once per turn, right?
The ones released in Xanathar's got everything I'll do.
So could it have been like somebody forgot to include that in what's the one that doesn't?
Agonizing
Um,
Blast.
no, not well, no, not, that one makes sense. That but I'm thinking of the one that
Eldritch
pushes you
Spear?
away.
Oh,
No, the
the
one.
pushing one. Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
So yeah,
yeah.
Spear, Agonizing, and the last one is not Lance, Repelling Blast. We're all
Repelling
released in the
blast.
PHB. And all of those have the game design premise of it's scaled with Eldritch Blast. So the more Eldritch Blast you have, the more of the effects you get.
Mm.
I'm unconvinced that they saw the direction that these invocations push people towards and said, we should make these worse for some reason. Because like Repelling Blast wasn't really ever the issue with the Eldritch Blast builds as far as like a game balance
Right.
perspective. So I don't know. I don't think it necessarily was a mistake in the initial design. I can't ever know what the designers were thinking, right?
Yeah.
I'm really not them. But like if I were to put my game design hat on, I think it makes the features a whole lot more interesting whenever they inherently scale with the scaling of the feature. And that is with multiple attacks. It becomes better as you get higher level because you get more of the instances of the effect per turn. That's what Repelling Blast does. That's what Organizing Blast does. And again, even Eldritch Spear, you get more instances of it doing something at least because if you can make 3 attacks at 300-foot range instead of only 1 attack a turn with a 300-foot range, that is like a more meaningful upside that it has that newer designed ones like Lanthe of Lethargy don't really have. I think it doesn't need to be this way, but it is. So, here we
Yeah.
are.
The other thing, I mean, I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole of what if it was this better way, but one thing, like, if every one of your blasts got the Lance of Lethargy, that would give you interesting choices to make. Do
Tons.
I want to slow 3 creatures down, or do I want to focus all my attacks on one creature? It's not going to slow them down 30 feet, but it's not going to stack upon itself. But yeah, you got to choose. What are you going to do?
Yeah, I definitely think
Now we don't
I,
have to make that choice.
I do think there could be multiple instances, right? There could be the one design where it does stack, where it does reduce its feet by 10 for each damage of it. It'd be its best version of it. It'd be a really interesting little tool that says Elder Blast isn't just a damage option now. It's also lockdown, right? You can say, I want that one thing, specifically that one thing, to stay in place. You could also say, I want all 4 of those things to get a little bit slower, get away from us. You also get a lot of interesting decisions where, well, if the first attack misses, does that change your math? Does that change the decisions you're making? The entire feature becomes so much more complex in any instance of it that's more than once per turn. And it's really kind of sad that it is just well, this is always going to just be, you pick one of the things to hit to slow. Yeah, that's kind of an interesting decision, but not nearly as interesting or unique of an opportunity, I think. And it makes me a lot lower on Less of Lethargy. I've never raved about uh, Ray of Frost. We've discussed that at length. And I don't really feel this is that much. like I would see myself putting this on a sheet before I put Ray of Frost on a sheet, only because I could see myself getting to like a level 11, 15 sorcerer warlock hybrid munchkin nonsense at a really high powered table and saying, okay, I do meaningfully care about dropping the speed by 10 feet, I guess, because it's just better than my comparative options for doing the one thing that my character is built to do. It's still not that high of enough an impact, especially in the later game, that I'm like ever thrilled with it, right?
No, I'm not thrilled with it at all. Just primarily, I mean, this could be a better discussion if repelling blast didn't already exist.
That's a great point.
I mean, I don't need both of these unless Lance of Lethargy was improved, like we were discussing. But as it stands, one slowdown until the end of my next turn. That's this. I don't know if this is the last invocation I would pick for my Eldritch blasts, but it would be close.
I think I agree. There's something to be said for having both, right? So if you push and slow, now you can kind of be like, oh, hey, it's kind of like you pushed them 20 feet ish. It's kind of like, you're getting a little bit more out of each of the features because they're stacked together. And that's kind of cute. Is that cute factor enough to push it over like good invocations? No. And like, that's where we have to be honest with this feature and be like, you're giving up real invocations for this. You're giving up a lot of the pact invocations, the ones that like improve your familiars. You're giving up the spells that will invocations, like Misty Visions, like the Levitate at Will one I think is better than this. You're giving out things like One with Shadow, which just lets you spend an action to become invisible, and that you can just do that, and that's so cool. And it's like you can't move or anything while you're doing it, but like just an at will, I need to be invisible in dim light or darkness, you got it. That's a really cool builder, like not even necessarily build around me, just a fun utility feature that's pretty decent that I will take every time over this. As far as like a raw power, like adding something to my sheet that's interesting, some way to engage with the game. This is 10-foot slow once a turn. And if you're like, oh, I could do a 10-foot slow and knock this thing back 40 feet. And that's kind of cute, I guess.
I mean, once per turn is still pretty good. There's a lot of these things you get, one use per long rest or whatever.
Yeah.
And I'll take a once per turn over that any day of the week. But yeah,
maybe relative impact, right? Like the relative impact of a slow is a lot lower than the relative impact of like a once per long rest. Everyone takes 88 damage, right? Like if there was a once per long rest fireball, I'd be like, yeah, this way better than one of my Eldritch Blasts every round can slow them. Especially again, if you're ever a character that isn't doing the dedicated Eldritch Blast thing, you never want this, right? Like you can't possibly, you have to already be dedicated to saying, I take this one action over and over again. And I want that action to be as good as it can be. And I agree, I'm not high on Repelling Blast. And I definitely put it on my sheet way before I put this on my sheet. You definitely put Agonizing Blast way on your sheet before you put this on your sheet. Yeah. I don't know, this is around the same realm as Spear, where it's like a 300-foot range versus a 10-foot slow, which is more relevant. I would hazard a guess the answer is probably neither. The slow might be slightly more relevant, but like I just at that point I'm like, okay, great, I've got my full Eldritch Blast
definitely more relevant.
Yeah, probably. And that leads, so this isn't the worst of all of them. It's the second worst. That's still like I whenever I get to my Eldritch Blaster character and I get the two invocations that I really want on them, and it's mainly the one, it's mainly Agonizing Blast, and after that, like, yeah, okay, Repelling is fine sometimes at the right tables. I really want to take the juicy, fun, meaty, interesting invocations, because if all I'm doing in combat is Eldritch Blasting, I want to be doing other things powerfully outside of combat too. I don't want Lance of Lethargy because the cost is far too high.
Actually, you know what? I'm starting to warm up to it during this conversation.
Yeah.
All right, going back to what you said before. This and Repelling Blast.
Sure.
Okay. Now, repelling blast, that I mean, you zap somebody with that 3 times, they get repelled 3 times, correct?
Yeah, they get knocked back 30 feet.
Yeah. Stack a slow on top of that.
Sure.
And that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it takes a 30-foot speed creature and forces them to dash. In that instance, we're past level for our third Eldritch Blast, so that's the first prerequisite. We have to have all 3 of our Eldritch Blasts hit. That's the second prerequisite. And the third prerequisite is we've sunk at least 2 invocations, one for Repelling and one for the Lance of Lethargy, into this feature to have that outcome happen at all.
Whoa. Let's be real. We're picking Agonizing Blast.
Exactly. So this is the third invocation that you're taking.
At least 2, at least 3.
Yeah, sure. So this is the third invocation that you're taking on a level 11th Warlock. And in the best case scenario where you specifically and exactly land all 3 of your attacks, if you land 2, doesn't matter because they can still disengage you with the 20-foot speed, right? If you miss any of the 3
where
attacks,
they are.
doesn't do anything. If they're engaged with you is where I care about it, or they're engaged with the target, right? That's where I would care about it most. It doesn't matter about where they are. You're right. I still find that, like, you're going to get those weird little middling areas. Repelling Blast is doing most of the heavy lifting there, and it does a little bit more, like, interesting stuff as far as disengagements go and whatnot, right? Like, it's definitely of the invocations, that one's doing the most. Do you then say, okay, I've taken Agonizing Blast, taken Repelling Blast, I'm going to take the worst of those options to stack on top of it to make my Repelling Blast a little bit better? Maybe is, I guess, where we're at. So we've locked this down to be one Warlock archetype that would consider this after taking 2 other invocations in the upper tier. That's where this has a home, which is like 0.001% of people playing the game will consider this as an option then, right?
So
like
almost
no one. Huh?
You're saying I'm special.
Yeah, I'm saying if you take this build, absolutely.
I don't know, I'd give it a lot of consideration.
Sure, if you are in exactly this specific environment, sure. Do you take this on anyone that's not casting Eldritch Blast every round in combat? Obviously not.
See, but if I was a Warlock, I'd probably be casting Eldritch Blast every round.
Sure, if you are a dedicated Eldritch Blaster, which you can be, this is again upper tier feature, because you really, if you only have 2 attacks, are you taking this as your 3rd invocation? I don't think so, right?
Where's that bridge when I come to it?
Sure. I really think this is so niche. I wouldn't recommend taking it prior to 11th level, and also prior to having the other 2 invocations. In the exact scenario with everything lined up beautifully so that you can push people back to slow them, to make it more consistently mattering. The slow can more consistently eat dash actions. That's where I'm a lot more interested. And that's kind of like the only spot I'm interested. So whenever you stack them all together and are willing to do exactly nothing else, sure. If you want to do anything else, you can't take this invocation. And I don't think you need to take this invocation, even if you're doing the Repelling Blast stuff, even if you're doing the full Eldritch Blaster stuff. Frankly, I think all you really need is Agonizing Blast, and then you can actually like build another a character that does other stuff in a powerful, interesting, meaningful way. I think that's what Warlock's really good at. You don't need to have Repelling Blast on your sheet to be a powerful Eldritch Blaster. You just need 2 levels in Sorcerer and Quicken Spell. Or sorry, it's 3 levels in Sorcerer, and then you're good to go. Better yet, just take the feat for the one that gives you 2 Sorcerer points that we just talked about. That gives you Quicken Spell. You just like, twice a long rest, you fire off 3 extra, 6 extra of these. That seems really good, and not like you need to commit harder to your in-combat Eldritch Blast potential. I really think you can... I think if you want to have a Warlock that feels good to play, that feels like it has a robust suite of options out of combat, the Eldritch Blast invocations will not give you that. They will continue to say, you're already good at one thing, and now you're marginally better at that one thing, and the rest of the 3 hours that you're playing this game, you have no tools that engage with it. And I want more tools to engage that other 3 hours of play that aren't the in-combat part of a session.
I mean, you have your imagination.
Is that the excuse that we're giving every bad class in the game? It's like, oh, barbarians don't need anything to do out of combat. You have your imagination. Wizards have familiars and spells and this huge robust list and subclasses that give them all kinds of crazy illusions and stuff, but the barbarians still have their imagination.
Well, that's the biggest tool in my toolkit.
Biggest tool in all of our toolkits is doing dumb shit.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I feel like if we continue this conversation, we're just going to talk about better options than Lance of Lethargy.
Probably.
We should try and talk about the actual invocation a little bit. All right. Slows a creature by 10 feet until the end of your next turn. Got anything else to say about that?
If it ever eats a dash, it's good. If it doesn't eat a dash, it's worthless.
Now, you were talking about using it with just in the case where you're engaged with the enemy, or a friend is engaged, or ally is engaged with the enemy. But what about just proactive? All right, they're way over there. I don't want them to be engaged with my friend, so I'll start Lance of Lethargying them right now.
So we'll take this on its own, right? So this is the merit of no other invocation stacked on top of this, right? So let's just say this is functionally Ray of Frost, right? Because it's the text of Ray of Frost. It's 10-foot slow attached to a damage dice when it hits. It's only once per round, so we can't do anything else beyond that. It's the exact same scenario. If a creature has a speed of 30, if they are within exactly 20 to 30 feet of you and you hit them, they now have to dash to engage you, and it is good. If they are within 30 to 50 feet of you, they have to dash anyway, and the dash gets them in range anyway. So the text doesn't matter. The slow has no effect, right? Them needing, sorry, it's 30. It's up to 40 feet is where that matters, right? Because they move 20, and they engage anyway. So they have to be either 20 to 30 feet away from you exactly, or 50 to 60 feet away from you exactly, for this to have anything at all to do. And those are two very specific regions on a battle map for these things to be. So if your things are within those areas, this can force something to dash that otherwise wouldn't have to, or force something to take an extra move on its next turn to get to you. Because when we're talking about distances like 50 feet plus, that is the instance where they no longer can reach you on a turn while dashing. However, they wouldn't have taken any action had they dashed to get to you that turn anyway, which means basically you're in a window where you would need it to be beyond 60 feet, because if they would move dash, not be in range with you, but then be able to move to engage you the following turn, it hasn't done anything proactive. So we're in this little bit of a weird zone where most of the areas creatures are going to be basically unaffected by the slow and practical gameplay states, right? Whenever your back's to the wall, if you're trying to hold a specific position, if you're just on the edge of a battle map and don't feel like having to deal with what's outside the edge of the battle map, which is a real amount of cases, especially in online play, which is a more growing and larger area of play, you're going to get into scenarios where the slow just, in very specific windows, will give you opportunities, again, against specifically melee-only creatures, so they have any ranged options, they can just take ranged attacks instead. In those small windows, against exactly melee-only creatures, it's fine. And that is so narrow, much like Ray of Frost is, I've never seen it matter. I have a hunch with Lance Lethargy being an invocation, I'm going to see it matter even less. Granted, it's got a longer range. Granted, for characters that do full Eldritch Blast builds over the course of a larger campaign, where they do want to spend their action every round casting it, you're definitely going to see more instances, because like with Ray of Frost, it falls off immediately because you don't want to cast that anymore once you get past like 3rd, 4th level. So the total instances where you're actually getting the spell cast will increase comparatively, because Eldritch Blast is all I want to do. In those worlds, maybe it's fine. I don't think it's still worth the invocation tax, but
All right, two things.
Hit me with them.
Yes, they move twice. They're now, they've dashed twice. All right, they reach you. If everybody is standing still, but you and your allies can also be moving at the same time. This, if you've got some like big giant dude coming at you with a club, and you need to survive, and slowing him down as you continue to move back gets you enough hits on him where it's close, but you finally take him down. That's a thing.
Sure.
Also,
I would, real quick to that point, I would note,
go ahead.
The party composition context matters a lot. If you have melee range characters that want to engage players, which is more than half the classes, this doesn't have that text as relevantly, because they'll just engage the melee characters, right? And the encounters aren't built to kill everyone, right? So it's not like you're expecting the paladin to die and then you'll continue to kite out the ogre, right? It's more of the paladin will engage and kill the ogre, and the slow will stop mattering. But okay, you're right in one instance. If you're doing the full tactical thing, it does help, but in a lot of parties, it does not. Next point.
All right. The next point is we've already established this is not happening in a vacuum. This is nobody's first alteration to Eldritch Blast.
Yeah.
This is not Ray of Frost, because in 100% of scenarios, they've already taken Agonizing Blast at least, and 95% Repelling Blast before this gets taken.
Yes. I will 100% agree. They're always taking Agonizing Blast over this, because it's just how your damage scales. Repelling Blast, there's, I guess, slightly more of an argument if you like the slow thing. Like, if you want to...
if you don't like the slow thing, you're sure as shit not picking this.
Yeah, that's a great point. So there's also a point, right, like, if you brought up the skirmisher fantasy, right, where you're kiting them backwards. Let's say you're a Tabaxi. Tabaxis are notably very fast characters that can double their move every turn, right? There can be character builds where like, if you can get a speed of 40 and you're against something with a speed of 20, you can always maintain that distance by them having to dash 2 turns and you being able to move 40 feet backwards, right? That will be indefinite kiting. If you can match double their speed, you can kite indefinitely. This becomes harder and harder as things get faster and faster, right? Things like war horses with 60 speeds, dragons and stuff with a fly speed of 90, 120. You're gonna vary in the mid to upper tiers. It's gonna be very challenging to kite out things that are supposed to engage you. Whenever teleportation magic starts to get mixed in, nigh impossible to kite things out effectively. That being said, there is something to be said for building a character that I want to go quickly. I don't necessarily need to repel. As long as I can get one of the things to hit with the slow, my speed all of a sudden means nothing can ever get in melee range of me. And that is a fantasy I can envision some people really wanting to play. Now, is it an effective fantasy? No. But it isn't a fantasy that you're allowed to try and build towards, and that you might have a couple cool moments with, where, you know, the one ruffian tries to get on you, and you're just like, nope, 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 and you just back away and slow it down and blast it indefinitely, and it screams in frustration as the DM goes, oh, I actually can't reach you, huh?
You know what I want to do? I want to play a game where you're the dungeon master and I pick a bunch of crap that you hate and I use it effectively.
You're going to find that my battle maps ask you to be on them, so that's going to be a little bit harder of an ask. You're not going to have an infinite forest to run back into, and my creatures very rarely are not going to have any ranged options, so, you know, take that as you will.
Just, yeah, someday.
Someday. For sure, actually, someday. We got plans. We're working it on. Viewers, if you like our banter, just wait. It'll be so much more.
All right. Well, you got a rating for this one?
I think it's a 2. I think it's the third invocation that I'm probably never taking on a Eldritch Blaster at tables that, like, if I'm playing a blaster, I want to do other things sometimes, and I'm not going to take invocations that don't really meaningfully empower my character that much, and this is in that boat. In those niche situations where you want to, like, knock something 40 feet away and force it to dash every single round, all you're okay with doing is saying, brain off, spells, hex, blast. Go for it. This can be an invocation that just empowers the one thing you're doing every round in combat. That's all you care about your character doing. If you like the champion fighter play style, if you like the, okay, dice on table, roll, big numbers go boom, I'm drinking some beers, I'm chatting with some friends, I'm here to do my one thing, this is probably the third or fourth invocation you take.
Okay. At the beginning of this conversation, I was ready to give this a 2. During the conversation, I moved up to a 3. You just might have moved me up to a 4.
I do know this is your kind of play style of, I just do with the one thing. Yeah, cool, let's do it. Let's roll some dice. And that's a reasonable thing to want out of the game. And you can have that here, and it's going to be a menial upgrade, and that's fine.
I'm not going to get too carried away, though. A 3 sounds reasonable to me.
Okay.
All right, that was, what the hell was that? That was
Lance of Lethargy.
Lance of Lethargy. Yes, thank you, Sam, and thank you everyone for joining us. Let us know what you think of this invocation down in the comments, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Thank you for watching. If you found this helpful, informative, or entertaining, I'd really appreciate it if you hit the like button below. You needn't smash it, a gentle tap will suffice. If you want to see more videos like this, subscribe to the channel. And make sure you check out the links in the description, where you'll find my Caverns Creatures series of comedy fantasy novels, Sam's full review of the spell, and other fun things.